We are entering a new era of gacha games, and two of the biggest ones are approaching very soon. Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero are free-to-play action RPGs being released in the next 2 months by Kuro Games and MiHoYo with some of the biggest pre-registration numbers that the space has ever seen. Zenless Zone Zero is leading the charge with 33 million pre-registrations, and Wuthering Waves is putting up their own big boy numbers with 22 million at the time of this recording. If you guys aren't aware of the magnitudes of these numbers, both Zenless Zone Zero and Wuthering Waves have more pre-registrations than Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail combined, and that's absolutely insane to think about. With numbers like these, Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero are currently looking to be the new titans entering the space in 2024, and this has everyone excited because we not only have another potential commercial success coming from HoYoverse, but we finally have a true competitor in the ring against them with Kuro Games. I think it's great and very important that the gacha space is starting to develop a lot more competition because it forces all parties to not become stagnant and complacent. Good competition tends to breed improvement and innovation, which hopefully results in better products for us, the consumer, to enjoy. Now, with being a consumer just like all of you guys, it's been pretty hard for me to pick which one I want to dive into. Both Zenless and Wuthering have grabbed my attention for very different reasons, so I honestly don't know which one I truly want to focus on, but you know what? Fuck it. Let's play both. Today we're going to be talking about why you should be excited for the release of Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero. To start, let's talk about the immersive worlds these games will be creating. Both Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero are aiming to provide strong storytelling, amazing characters, and breathtaking worlds that will hopefully leave fans with unforgettable experiences. The great thing about both of these titles is that even though they will be coexisting in the same genre, they tackle similar ideas in completely different ways. Wuthering Waves will be presenting new players with an open world experience akin to other games like Genshin Impact and Zelda Breath of the Wild, but with a much more darker tone. The game is set in a post-apocalyptic world where a mysterious catastrophe struck, wiping out most of humanity and leaving it on the verge of extinction. I love this tone shift from what the space has been for a while now because it felt like a lot of games didn't want to shift from that more vibrant and heartwarming approach that everyone got used to. Wuthering taking this new approach has me hoping that they will be using this to introduce new dynamics and provide a more mature form of storytelling, allowing itself to stand apart against most of their competitors. The new story for Wuthering Waves looks like it has the potential to captivate a lot of people who are interested. I'm already interested in it somewhat, so I'm excited to see how they'll tackle it in the future. If you guys didn't know, prior to the last beta, Kuro actually rewrote 90% of the story due to the previous feedback they received. A lot of players that originally tested Wuthering Waves felt like the story was, well, to be frank, ass. But after the adjustments that were made for closed beta 2, a lot of players do agree that the new story is in a much better place than it was before, and that's great to hear. I believe in order for an open world game, especially a gacha one, to have a bright future, the world and characters in it need to be tied to a strong plot that makes players want to learn more about them, which in return influence them to want to pull for them. This is something that I believe HoYoverse has been really strong at, and I expect them to do the same with Zenless Zone Zero. Zenless is taking a very different approach with their world than what we are used to with HoYoverse. This will be an instance-based RPG with an urban feel to it. The game currently doesn't seem to have an overarching plot like previous HoYo games, but it takes a different approach by focusing on creating core story moments that are dedicated to characters in the world per chapter. This form of storytelling actually feels really good because it makes you feel like each character's mini story feels a lot more personal and a bit more exciting in my opinion. They also then accompany this storytelling with a comic book style approach for dialogue and some of the best visual cutscenes the space has ever seen, even from them themselves. If there's anything that HoYoverse knows what to do, it's definitely how to make you fall in love with the world and the characters they create, and I think they've already done it again with Zenless based on the few chapters that we've received. This game personally provides the aesthetics I love in gaming. It reminds me so much of my favorite games like Jet Set Radio, Bomb vs Cyberpunk, and Persona, and I can't wait to experience what more they have for it in the future. Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero are both looking to take the gacha space by storm, and I want to be here for it when they do. Just from the worlds themselves alone, they are already captivating a lot of people, but the thing that will determine how long a lot of people will stay in it is the gameplay/combat. The combat for these games have been a primary topic of discussion for them for months. A lot of these discussions have been either praising one of them or slandering the other. To me, both of the combat systems in these games seem pretty good. They just are angled towards different audiences at first glance. Let's start with Zenless. Just a few days ago, I made a video explaining the entire combat system of Zenless Zone Zero because a lot of people have just been dissolving it to being a mashy game. Now, I will admit the game does allow you to play this way throughout the story and early game content, but the difficulty spike that occurs once you hit mid to late game essentially forces you to understand the combat system as a whole. This is where Zenless's combat shines. The goal of the system is to be easy to pick up and become comfortable with, but the game challenges you with having the reaction time and speed to properly clear content and understand how to properly build your teams. It also has a level of freedom with animation cancels and character switching, allowing you to do more than just mashing one button. It's very obvious that HoYoverse designs their games to be very easy to pick up for casual players. Look no further than Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. But the exciting thing they are doing with Zenless is actually one of the big things that they did with Star Rail. With these games, they are presenting themselves to be casual friendly up front, but they also have in-game content that allows players who are looking for a more hardcore experience to be very much satisfied as well. This content structure was well received in Honkai Star Rail with things like MLC because it allowed HoYoverse to not only satisfy their casual audience, but it allowed them to provide a focus for their hardcore audience as well. This is something I think you should expect from HoYoverse with Zenless and any other future title they have coming, because they honestly found a perfect middle ground to please both audiences. Now, to go ahead and make this clear, just like in my last video, I'm not saying Zenless has this godly combat system that's better than anything we've ever seen before. I'm just saying that it's simple, but it has a layer of complexity that slowly but progressively challenges players as they progress closer to the in-game content, and it has such a great flow and pacing to it that it's honestly a blast to play regardless of how simple it is. Honestly, I think Zenless combat only gets the hate that it does because Wuthering Waves is its competition, but Kuro's approach to combat is quite different than MiHoYo's. If you've never heard of Kuro or played any of their games, then let me tell you that they are developers known for their gameplay and combat systems. Punishy Grave Raven, Kuro's biggest hit prior to Wuthering Waves, was always praised for its amazing combat. This is a game that has been compared to the likes of AAA action games because of how insane and impressive the combat is for a gacha game. This is a team that prides themselves on delivering amazing combat experiences, and they did it again with Wuthering Waves. Wuthering Waves' combat system is looking to provide some of the most unique looking and feeling characters the space has ever seen from an open world gacha game. Characters have unique meter mechanics, insane movement options, and even multiple combat styles, allowing them to feel so expressive and exciting. If you played a Kuro game before, this is no surprise to you, but the difference between Wuthering and their previous games is that it's a lot more casual friendly. The ceiling or potential to Wuthering Waves combat is looking to be pretty high, but the floor of the game is low enough for players that aren't as experienced with action games for them to enjoy. This is a sweet spot that Kuro needed to find and hit, especially if they want to become a true competitor against MiHoYo in the space. These games need to be fostered and created to garner a casual appeal to see true longevity, and from what we experienced so far, I think Wuthering Waves and Kuro Games has finally accomplished that. They did this not only through the combat though, they also did this through the content of the game. Just like Zenless, as you progress through Wuthering Waves, content for the hardcore audience becomes available and truly shows what the gameplay of this game is capable of as you get closer to in-game. Like I said earlier, both of these games may be in the same genre, but they are trying to approach either two different audiences or the same audience but in two different ways. If we were to put these into different words, I would say Zenless combat system is a faster paced but arcade style approach with flashy visuals, while Wuthering Waves seems to be providing a more execution based with moderate pacing, visual finesse, and deliberateness. Both games are very different from each other, but they provide their own fun in their own way. The success of Zenless Zone Zero and Wuthering Waves will be built off of how immersed their audience can become in their worlds and how fun and expressive their gameplay and combat systems can truly be. But the longevity of them will be determined by how consistently can they provide quality content to players on a weekly to monthly basis. I'm new to the space, but I believe the content cycle for most HoYo games seem to be roughly every 6 or so weeks. This is something they've been pretty consistent with for their bigger games, so I'm willing to bet on that Zenless will follow a similar tracking. The only question for Zenless will be, will these updates be engaging enough to keep players interested? This game is already fighting against hate because of the simple combat system and players disliking the TV system. This is something that the team has addressed and improved on multiple times, but we just don't know if these adjustments are enough to still maintain players in the long run post-release. I'm hoping so that these changes are big enough and have been impactful for players once the game finally releases, since I have the opportunity to play Close Beta 3 and I feel like it's a much improved game, especially in the state that it's in. With Wuthering Waves though, we have to worry about, can the team match the 6-week content rollout like MiHoYo? I say this because if they fall too far behind with content releases, the competitors will be in players' faces a lot more often, which could cause their player numbers to dwindle quite a bit. I think if Kuro can at least adapt maybe a 6 to 8 week content update plan for the game's future, then they still can hold their own and maintain a strong audience. This will also require them to make engaging content to keep their audience satisfied, just like Zenless, but I believe both of these games are very much capable of doing so I don't think it's too much to worry there. The future is looking bright for the gacha space, and I can't wait till we finally get our hands on these 2 upcoming releases. If you guys are excited, comment down below which one you are excited for the most and tell me why. For me, I'm excited for both Wuthering and Zenless, but I think maybe a little more Zenless just because it has that visual flair that I love within a lot of my games. But both of them will get played on this channel nonetheless. Also, please, for the love of God, keep it civil in the comments. I don't need you guys arguing and telling which game is better, which one's trash. It's a very pointless discussion. Just play what you like. Remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And always remember to believe in the you that believes in yourself. I see you guys in the next one.